Welcome back to the Mike Will Experiment. Stay tuned to the end of the video to find out if I think Pokemon has bad graphics. So there's been a lot of criticism lately of Pokemon Violet and Scarlet, and I just sort of wanted to weigh in where this game falls with the rest of the franchise. Now, first thing I want to start off with is the Metacritic score. Now, you'll see here on screen that the Metacritic score on these games is usually no lower than 75 and no higher than like 90. And you can see the various peaks and valleys that they have gone through during this cycle of Pokemon. We're kind of back down to a dip with this latest game, as it's only hit 77 on Metacritic, but most of this is due to the technical problems that could or may not be patched out. You know, Game Freak doesn't really have a history of patching stuff out. Doesn't mean it won't be patched out. It just might mean that it's unlikely. I, for one, don't have a problem with the way this game looks or runs. Yeah, it's a little choppy, but really, I'm just there for the Pokemon, as many of you are. What we're discussing in this video is, what is the history of graphics in Pokemon? You know, has it always been behind the times? Let's look at Gen 1. I've got Pokemon Yellow compared to Link's Awakening, and you can see here, these both came out the same year, and clearly, Game Freak is behind the curve right out the gate. Now here's Gen 2, and I did compare a slightly less graphical prowess game in Wario Land 3 next to Pokemon Crystal, but they still really haven't moved the graphics at this point very far, and you'll notice it's really behind, and they don't even get 3D until much later. And here's Gen 3, which is finally catching up to the Super Nintendo level of graphics in 2002. As you can see, still behind. SNES was out much earlier than that. And you can see Castlevania for GBA just crushes this graphically. Now this next one, I did select Metroid Prime Hunters as the comparison. And this is because you can see even portably Nintendo has moved to 3D, but Game Freak is still on 2D at this point. Way behind even Nintendo, who's already behind everybody else usually. Now next is Pokemon Black and White, which is a critically acclaimed game. Don't get me wrong, this is just about graphics versus MGS Peace Walker. Now that game looks incredible on the PSP, which released at this time and again was light years above Game Freak. Still, I know these are different types of games, but the point remains. Now these games came out the same year, but for different systems, so keep that in mind. But look at the difference. The 3DS is already getting into 3D. You know, when are we going to see Pokemon in 3D? You know, it's already like 2016. I was being a little facetious there. It was only 2013, but now 2016, you have a very highly critically acclaimed step up in graphics, probably the biggest step up in graphics until Arceus, which isn't listed here because it's a side game. But this game actually did really well, and I did compare it to another contemporary game on the PSP, and you can see what the PSP was pushing out during this time. Not that Game Freak would make Pokemon games on the PSP, but you can see that it's just behind the technology curve is the point I'm making. And once again with Sword and Shield, another Luigi's Mansion game, just absolutely blowing it away. It's not of the same scale, of course, but again, you could compare Xenoblade Chronicles. There's, you know, all kinds of games that you could compare. Sword and Shield just wasn't holding up graphically either, although it was a really big step up leading into Arceus. Next up is Pokemon Violet and Scarlet versus Sonic Frontiers. Now on this one, it's a case of two heavily criticized games, specifically the Nintendo Switch version of Sonic and Pokemon. And, you know, these are both, I think, good-looking games. I just think that they're, you know, not quite with the acumen to make, and they never have been, is kind of my point. You know, it's like these Pokemon games, they're gonna be fun regardless of how they look. And you can go back and look at Red, and you can look at Black, and you can look at Ruby, and you can look at all these games and compare them to their contemporaries, and they never added up graphically, and no one ever cared. I guess that's my point is most Pokemon fans don't care. A lot of people that do care are people from outside the Pokemon community that want to smite Nintendo or make Nintendo look bad or make Pokemon look bad as baby game or whatever. Those are the people that are the loudest when these graphics come out. Oh, Pokemon sucks. I'm not getting that in graphics, you know. For me, that just isn't a factor. I thought this game looked good from the beginning. Yeah, it's a little rough around the edges. Maybe they'll patch it. Maybe they won't. But I'm going to enjoy it, and graphics are not what Pokemon is about, is the subject of this video. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, and I hope y'all have a great day.
First partner Pokemon. Sprigatito, Fuecoco, or Quaxley. The legendary Pokemon Koraidon or Miraidon will also help you during your travels.